Hello, everyone. My name is Lynn Fisher. I'm the CMO here at Newlab. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Today, we'll be sharing a brief overview of Newlab and our membership, and then we'll have a great opportunity to speak with one of our members, Sam Ray, CEO and co-founder of Clip, a clean mobility bike tech startup. So first, a little bit about Newlab and our membership. Newlab is a community of experts and innovators applying transformative technology to solve the world's biggest challenges. We do this through membership and our studios, where we bring together entrepreneurs, engineers, inventors, and industry leaders to create sustainable solutions and enterprises. We employ technologies including robotics, AI, and material science to transform what matters most: health, environment, cities, and infrastructure. So just some of our recent stats. We have over 163 member companies. That equates to about 800 entrepreneurs, engineers, and inventors that call Newlab home. The membership process at Newlab, if you're interested, you can go to newlab/membership, allows people to apply if they're focused on transformative technologies, frontier technologies, as I mentioned, like robotics, AI, and material science. And we've accepted a little bit less than 15% of people who have applied. So through that vetting process, it allows us to create a collaborative, like-minded community of companies focused on transformative technologies. We have 2 locations in Brooklyn. I'm in our headquarters here in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and you'll also hear from Sam, who's in a different location. We're socially distanced. And this space is amazing. It's over 84,000 square feet. We have prototyping facilities. We have over 70-foot ceilings for natural light, and lots of spaces for startups to start their company here, but then also to grow. So a bit about our membership and our community and the benefits that surround that. What we like to say is our members are really building the future. So just a few examples of some of our member companies. Farm Shelf is building smart indoor sustainable farming systems. Honeybee Robotics is developing advanced robotic systems for the toughest environments, including a drill that just landed on Mars. OpenBCI, that's developing technology to harness brainwaves to control a wide range of devices, and Foam, a company creating a map of the world through spatial blockchain applications. We're also a dynamic community. So 23% of the member companies have a female CEO or co-founder, 70% have a master's or doctorate, 39% are serial entrepreneurs. And a statistic that we're proud of is 38% of the companies that are at Newlab have moved their headquarters from another location to be here and benefit from our community. So we have also grown exponentially. We started with 23 companies when we opened our doors in 2016. We're now at over 160 member companies. The other metric that's very interesting and I think telling about the value of being a part of our community is that the aggregate valuation of those 23 companies was 175 million when we began. Now it's over 4 billion. So there are 3 major areas where we really support our member companies. And then hopefully when we talk to Sam and his entrepreneurial journey, he can tell you a little bit more about these as well. But the 3 areas are collaboration and community. So as I mentioned, we have a vetting process. We look for like-minded people who are focused on transformative technology, but are also looking to make a positive impact on people on the planet. And we really believe that once they're in this space, that they find guidance and mentorship from each other, but also from our staff and our networks. We also have over $5 million worth of prototyping equipment here in our space where companies can take a sketch to a realized prototype quickly in-house with the use of our shops, but also an in-house team of product realization specialists that can take you through that process. We have 3D printers, we have CNC, we have wood and metal shops, casting and finishing, textiles and electronics. And then thirdly, we also have opportunities for our member companies to pilot their technologies in real world solutions or scenarios. And we also have investment opportunities through our network of investment partners across New York and across nationally. So instead of speaking more about Newlab from our perspective, the SAP's perspective, I want to introduce you to Sam and also allow him to tell you about his entrepreneurial journey. So we're pleased to have co-founder of Clip, Sam Ray, here at Newlab to tell you more about his journey.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Lynn. Thank you for this opportunity. Great to be here. So I am Som. I am the CEO and co-founder of Clip.bike. Our mission is to make biking in cities easier by making e-bike technology more affordable and more accessible. So what we are doing here is we've built a small, portable and affordable consumer device that you can attach to any bicycle, and it upgrades any regular old bicycle to an e-bike instantly.
And I wonder, we have a couple of other slides, but then we'll make it a little bit more conversational, Sam. Maybe talking about why you started the company and some of the challenges that you saw in the market that you're looking to address.
Sure. So when I talk about this story, I kind of reflect on my early experiences with urban congestion and then into my research into urban mobility. So I grew up in Delhi, and in the midst of the worst urban congestion, and that was part of life every day. When I went to study at MIT at the Smart Cities group at Media Lab, we were kind of looking at the future of urban mobility, but we were still looking at it from the lens of the automobile. Now, because of that, all of our sort of work kind of revolved around the car itself. Now, post research, some of us kind of started looking at what would be if we shifted our focus to the bicycle instead. And as we did so, we realized that it's one of the best sort of ways to get people across in cities, and especially for the small to medium sort of commutes that they all sort of participate in every day of their lives. So as I kind of myself decided to take up bicycling as my own sort of mode of daily commute, I quickly came to this realization that there were these brief moments of extreme effort, which everybody experienced, especially people on my route. When we would go up to on Vanderbilt, I would see people like really sort of stressed out and putting in a lot of effort to go up that hill. So we quickly realized that this brief moment of extreme effort is a big deterrent in getting more and more people to use bicycling as a daily commute option. So I kind of started thinking about for my own self, what could make that pain go away. Of course, e-bikes were an option, but I owned a nice bike. I didn't want to exchange it for an expensive, heavy e-bike. So I wanted to have a device which I could, which would be small enough, which would help me just for that little uphill stretch. So I could, use it for that little bit and then continue to pedal and bicycle as I would normally do. So I would have the choice of, having a regular bicycle, which I would, which I already owned, plus having this little attachment, which whenever I attached it, could give me that little extra help whenever I needed it. So that was kind of the reason why we looked at and started this company, where we started, and we started a Newlab from the very beginning, so which was very exciting to do as well.
Great. And I'm certainly fascinated by it. I think I had the same experience. I'm a cyclist in New York City. Probably many of the people who are joining in and listening, either from Austin or New York or LA, maybe cyclists as well, and understand the issues of thinking maybe twice, 3 times about commuting 6 miles to work with hills, in my case, over Brooklyn Bridge and back, which prevented me many times. But what is a solution to that? And so I think your product is pretty fascinating. We have here a little bit of a kind of schematic or some photos that show how easy it is in just 4 steps, and maybe you want to take us through that.
Yeah, this was one of the critical sort of points that I wanted to have a device where you required no tools at all. You could attach it onto any bike by just approaching it and pulling down on this, the self-adjusting clamp that we've designed, which aligns and adjusts itself to any kind of fork. So it is an extremely easy setup. I would happily kind of show you how to set that up perhaps towards the end of this talk. But essentially, it is a super easy setup, which is one of the key sort of features which differentiates this from anything else.
Wonderful. I think we actually have a video here too that
Yeah,
shows it in action, which is pretty fascinating how quickly you can clip it on and then just ride away at speed.
yeah. So you basically attach it to the front fork, align it to the front fork, and then you pull down on this clamp. It adjusts the amount of pressure required for it to be rigidly fixed based on whatever the fork thickness is of a particular bike. Uh, and then you have a small Bluetooth remote toggle that you pull out of the device and you attach onto the handlebar. And that allows you to turn on or off the ride assist on the device itself. So whenever you're going
Okay.
up a hill, for example, you would ride normally without any ride assist. But say you approach the Brooklyn Bridge, you would engage it, and that'll help you go up the hill, and then you can turn it off. So this kind of a user experience or user behavior that we are trying to introduce is also quite new. It does not power you continuously. You only use it when you need it. So we do this, and it helps us kind of reduce the number of batteries, number of cells we need in our battery, they reduce the weight. So it kind of creates this new type of mobility device, augmentation device that is quite interesting.
And that, I think, is a very interesting feature because from what I've heard in my background and talking to friends who bike as a form of transportation and commute, is that they didn't want to lose the exercise aspect of
Absolutely.
that. And so this is wonderful in that it is a hybrid and that you can choose to turn it off, but then when you need that augmentation, it's there for you. So the other thing is the beautiful design and also the fact that it's so portable and can be placed on your desk and charged like a phone.
Right. Yeah, I'm from a design background. I am originally trained as an architect, and then I so big shout out to the Newlab and the community here. So I was part of this group that I was at MIT, the Smart Cities group. A lot of our peers kind of are here. So and one of Marcel Botha, who runs 10x Beta, they were our early sort of partners in helping us fine-tune the design and the prototyping. And that's all kind of part of this experience here of working with our peers and being able to kind of engage them on particular aspects of the development process. So yeah, so this design was extremely sort of guided by the fact that you had to be able to easily take it off the bike and then just carry it to your desk and charge it like a phone while you're working. So that kind of a user experience is integral to the product design aspect of it.
Right. And that is an interesting aspect. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey here at Newlab, but also in general. Um, so you talked about, what you were seeing from a gap in the marketplace. But can you also talk about how you innovated on the product and then also how you were applying it to create a positive impact? So many of the companies here are looking at sustainability and the environment. And so wondering how that played a factor.
True. I think so. When we started this company, it came out of our own sort of personal kind of desire to reduce our, so I chose bicycling before I started working on Clip to become a better citizen of the world. So to kind of, reduce my own carbon footprint, to, become healthier. And as I did so, I kind of identified and realized that there was this gap which exists. So, and my co-founder Clem, who, has worked across the world introducing new sort of sustainability tech to the world, we kind of started brainstorming on this. And that was the point when we started articulating, what the different aspects of this device should be. So, and through the course of, the past 2.5 years, we have fine-tuned it from the very first sort of alpha prototype that I built here at the lab to this much more, refined and sophisticated piece of engineering that we see over here. Uh, so that was kind of the development process, with all our sort of stakeholders being part of this community, working with the designers here, working with the engineers here, and just being able to kind of identify. So, I mean, there are, several aspects of this. I mean, it's not just the hardware. There are, the software aspects of it, and to be able to find the right kind of talent and the skills required to execute on them. It's the fact that we are here. It's accelerated the process, immensely.
Wonderful. So I'm guessing not only the Newlab community, but also Brooklyn was probably very useful in
Right.
attracting the right type of talent, and then also access to things like capital or guidance. Can you talk a little bit about, I mentioned upfront how we have prototyping facilities here, how you may have utilized that and how that might have helped push the innovation forward?
Absolutely. So when we started Clip, I had just quit from another company I was working at. Prior to that, I had my own startup, which was a software startup. So I decided to kind of, uh, sort of start from the very beginning at the New Lab itself. And that was partly because before New Lab came into this space, they used to be in the beta space across in the building across. And I used to off and on work with another sort of friend from my smart cities days, Mitch Joachim, who runs Terraform One. And I was extremely impressed with the cohort that was part of New Lab at the time. And I kind of like made up my mind, like when I start the next sort of project, the next company, it has to be here, because it not only would get me access to the right skills, the right expertise, but also just the ability to sort of build the first prototypes myself. So, and which is exactly what I did. So, the first prototype was built right here, used all the 3D printing facilities, the electronics lab, and the metal bending. So everything was kind of done here for the very first sort of, and without that, without the ability to sort of execute on a proof of concept so quickly and at a low sort of cost threshold,
Mm.
uh, I, it would have been extremely difficult for us to get here today.
Okay, great. Um, Also, I'm sure many of the listeners today are founders or they're interested in starting their own company. So whether it's a mobility company or something in software or another area, maybe in frontier tech, has there have there been learnings along the way for you as a founder? And anything that you can share as either
Right.
something that you learned from, or maybe even some advice for the audience today?
Absolutely. I think so. I would, share the learnings from the fact that this is the second startup that I did, and all of my learnings, kind of all the mistakes that I made, were from the earlier startup that I did. So my goal has been not to repeat any of those mistakes that I made from the earlier startup. And some of the key learnings are to find the right team. One can never do such a complex operation oneself. You have to surround yourself with the right team. And I'm fortunate to have Clem Alcala as my co-founder, Eric Nozier as my partner. So we are, a tightly knit team. We bring diverse sort of viewpoints to every, action that we discuss. So I think that is critical at the very start. If you don't have the right team, I think, you will kind of end up with a lot of problems which will escalate and kind of snowball. So I think that's critical. And then identifying, I mean, so the team is the core, and then to sort of have the next sort of layer of network, this kind of surrounding ecosystem that you can, inject yourself in and take advantage of. I think that is critical as the next step. So yeah, a lot of learning, but I think these two would be like the critical.
Great. What would you share for someone specifically interested or already embarking on a mobility startup?
Uh, I think micromobility has to be the future. Uh, we have for too long sort of looked at urban mobility or looked at solving the problems of urban mobility through the lens of an automobile, and that has never solved anything. It has only escalated the problems, compounded them. So, this whole sort of philosophy of just adding another lane or boring another tunnel is not the way to go. I think the way to go is the way, some cultures took a stance early on. So if you look at the Dutch, I mean, 50 years ago, I mean, the Americans and the Dutch and the whole world essentially was at a similar place. I mean, there was the oil crisis, and bicycling was going up. It was really, people were using bicycles and other forms of micromobility. And the Dutch kind of, rejected the older sort of models of urban planning centered around the car or the automobile, and they could, build these well-knit sort of bicycling economies within their cities. People, these lived-in streets. Uh, Whereas, the U.S. went a whole different way, which was, a remnant of modernist thinking. But I don't think we can go along that anymore. I think there's a UN sort of study which is by 2050, 2/3 of the world will be kind of population will be living in sort of urban centers, and with such dense urban centers, we cannot have these large single occupancy vehicles sort of crowding the streets. Whether it be electric or autonomous, I mean, there's still these these the space that they occupy. So yeah, I think it has to be micromobility. It has to be from the bottom up. People like us who just adopt it, and policy and infrastructure will kind of shift with that effort.
Okay, great. That's great background. And I think exciting news for anyone who is focused on micromobility. Um,
Yeah.
and so, as far as your product and roadmap, your product is available for pre order today. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we are setting up production, and we are sort of our timeline is to start shipping the first units by the summer of this year. So we are excited to sort of have more and more of these units out on the streets. It is good to kind of see the kind of enthusiasm from people, because uh, we sold out very quickly, so we've started another pre-order, and it's great to kind of see that, and hopefully see these units out on the street, in regular use. I think that would be what I'm looking forward to, and the whole team is kind of looking forward to that.
Great. And just a note to the audience, if you do a search on YouTube and look for a clip, and there is a great short video about the faces and exclamations that people make once they use it, because they're
Right.
surprised at how great it is in augmenting the ride. So it's pretty great to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because people come to us, or when they approach this device, I mean, it's a fairly diminutive kind of device, right? It doesn't look like it could do what we claim it does. So, which is kind of great to see when people, you know, start this device, you can see that expression immediately kind of change, which is kind of like, whoa, I did not expect that. So, which is kind of great.
Right.
Yeah, true.
Terrific. Okay, I have a few audience questions. Um, this is great. How are you able to overcome some of the typical challenges that hardware startups face, like limited investment opportunities or identifying manufacturing partners?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I think, there is the cliche that hardware is hard. It is quite true. And there is also another great quote. A friend of mine sort of said once in conversation that, software impacts the real world, but hardware is the real world. And I think that is kind of very true. And there should be more focus on hardware because you enable hardware with software. So I think we have to kind of, you know, sort of more funding should sort of start flowing towards hardware projects. And hardware gets complicated because, it is not so the iteration cycle for hardware is a lot more different for software. I mean, I've built a software company before. We did this, visualization company before, and I could kind of tell you that the path to market on a software company is much more faster. I mean, you could have a very early MVP and you could put it out there and get, feedback and then iterate. But with hardware, you can't do that. You have to, do a lot of internal testing. You have to do limited releases, make sure everything is good. And it's not just that, you have to make sure manufacturing, supply chain, everything is kind of lined up so that ultimately when a customer gets a product, it is, a joyful thing to use. There are no problems or issues. So yeah, I mean, hardware is complex, and but it is much more satisfying, I think, in the end when you can really sort of impact the real world.
Definitely. So we only have a couple of minutes left, and maybe it's a good way
Sure.
to transition into you maybe getting on the bike
Yeah,
or
yeah,
showing the product.
absolutely. So uh, this is our final prototype, which is going into production. So the device is about that big. You basically pull this out, you attach it to the front wheel, and you kind of clamp this in, and this is it. And then you pull this Bluetooth module out from the mother sort of dock, and you attach it to the bar, and you're ready to go. So thanks,
Amazing. That
Lynn.
was so fast. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to ride away this way.
Wonderful. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And please do visit newlab.com for any other information or book some time at our booth.